Hi, how are you doing today? I'm here with my November wrap-up. November was very much a reading slump month for me. I mean, a life slump in general. I had a difficult time getting my shit done, but the month has ended. I feel in a much bigger reading mood right now, and I feel like I'm back on top of things. Hopefully December will be much better, but I did still read in November, and I'm very excited to discuss these books with you. Starting off with some stats. In November, I read a total of 6 books, which is 1,930 pages read, which is an average of 321.66 pages per book and 64.33 pages per day. I feel like that's still like pretty decent. Like, of course, my average per day is like much lower than I actually want, but my average page count per book is actually higher than last month, so there's something. Then for Farmad, I read 1 book I physically owned for Galleys from NetGalley and 1 book I got from the library. With star ratings, we have 2 stars, 2 4 stars, and 2 5 stars, which is an average rating of 3.66. So rating wise, we're also doing pretty okay. And for age range, I read 2 young adult novels and 4 adult books. And for genre, we have 2 contemporaries, 2 fantasies, and 2 mystery thrillers. So like even divides on almost everything. So at least there is that. And yeah, let's just immediately get into the 6 books that I read and what I thought of them, starting off with You Again by Kate Goldbeck, which I give out of 5 stars to that I got from NetGalley. This one I picked up because it has a very autumnal cover, and I wanted to read it before autumn was over, and I had been seeing some buzz around it, and even despite seeing all that buzz, I wasn't expecting to like this one as much as I did. I was expecting Oftentimes I got that, but like I love this book. Like I got so invested in it. It's not as autumnal of a read as the cover is, because it does take place over like a very large time frame, but I really liked it. I really liked how they developed the relationship and how it went first like into a reluctant friendship and then eventually like a relationship. I thought that was really well done. I actually really liked what was done with like the different time jumps. I feel like that made it more realistic in a way, and I really liked it. And the main part why I love this book so much is that it felt very real to me. I finished this in like the first of the month or something, so my memory of it is a little bit hazy. I apologize. Then the next book that I read is The Chalice of the Gods by Riordan, which I gave out of 5 stars to. And I did a full spoiler reading vlog for this book, which I'll leave in the eye above, so you can go check that out if you want to. This is the 6th Percy Jackson and the Olympians book. It does take place years after the original series, with Percy kind of having to go on a new quest before going into college, and I loved it so much. Like I was a bit scared going into this book because I have since read all Rick Riordan books except 1 that he's written, so there have been some hits and misses throughout his entire catalog. So I was nervous going into this book, and I also was a bit nervous thinking that this might be a bit of a cash grab considering the TV show is coming out, but that it definitely didn't feel that way. This felt very genuine and authentic, and I feel like this is a love letter to the friendship between Grover, Percy, and Annabeth, and the relationship between Percy and Annabeth. There's just so many moments of like deep appreciation between these people, and I loved it so much. There's also some discussions about like aging in here, which is gonna sound weird, but I really love, because a big part of this book is that being a demigod is a dangerous life, and Percy's main goal in life has always been to make it to 18, and now that is getting closer and closer, he is kind of like starting to reevaluate kind of his life and his life goals, and for the first time, as he comes across different things on this quest, kind of starts to consider that there is a life beyond turning 18 and that he will be able to get that. And it just was so beautiful. It was a very nostalgic read and felt like coming home, and I really liked it. And then the actual story kind of to me feels a bit like a cozy fantasy in a sense, because it isn't like a world-saving, life-saving quest, but it is still like high stakes, you know. You don't go into a fight thinking it's nothing, you know. And I don't know, I really liked it, and I'm very excited to read the next book that is coming out. Next, I read The Christmas Appeal by Janice Hallett, which I gave out of 5 stars to. I gotta get it up to a NetGalley. If you saw my wrap up last month, you know that I read The Appeal last month and I loved it. So I was really excited to read this little Christmas novella set in the same world with the same characters, just a new mystery. It's a novella, so it's like very short, and I feel like that's also where my issue kind of ended up laying with this book. Because it was so short, I feel like you first like are introduced to the point which the characters are now and how their dynamic as a large group of characters looks like now, and then like the mystery gets introduced and it almost immediately gets solved and everything gets like wrapped up. I felt like that was just a little bit too quick. I felt like there should have been a bit more time in between the mystery being introduced and then being solved. That's my only complaint for it, because otherwise I had a really fun time reading this. Then next I read Wreck the Halls by Tessa Bailey, which I give it 5 stars to, and as a guy I got from Nankali. This is a Christmas romance, but it's not very Christmassy. I mean, it takes place around the holidays and like the finale is on Christmas Eve, but it doesn't really feel like Christmassy, just a romance. And I just wasn't vibing with the romance. I didn't like it. I feel like it was just a bit too forced for my liking. I felt like it just felt like these characters felt like I'm gonna have a hard time explaining this because you need to read the book to understand this, but I felt like how the relationship was set up and how quickly they kind of fell in love. It kind of more so felt to me like they were like, we have this connection like our entire lives despite not knowing each other, and that connection means that we're meant to be together. And it kind of felt more so like they were together because they were supposed to, in a way, rather than because they genuinely loved each other. I don't know if any of that makes sense to people who have not read this book, but I hope it does. And I just also didn't really like how they both had the other person on like a pedestal and just saw them as like this perfect being that could do no wrong. I feel like that's just not realistic. And again, it's very incel-y, so that definitely didn't help with all of these issues. I feel like maybe if there was a bit more development for the romance, I might have liked it more. I also wasn't the biggest fan of the guy main character for no particular reason, just I don't know, I didn't mesh with him. And the only reason this didn't end up being a 1-star is because of our main character's moms. They were in a band together and like trying to get them together to write the novel, do a reunion, but they are phenomenal. Like the moms like stole every scene that they were in. It was so fun reading those scenes and I had a blast reading that. Then next I read the Brothers Hawthorne by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, which I also gave 5 stars to. This is probably my biggest disappointment for this video because I really loved the Inheritance Games trilogy, like the original trilogy, because now it's a series. I really loved the original trilogy and thought it got better with each book. This just wasn't good. It felt like 2 separate books poorly smushed together, and it felt like we didn't really get enough attention on either story, because what it would do is kind of just like basically it follows Grayson and Jameson. I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name, by the way. I just always say Jameson, but I don't know if that's how you do it. But it follows the 2 of them and their own kind of like journeys that I won't spoil, but they have nothing to do with each other. These stories, like nothing at all. Like there's not common ground for at least a single second. And you get like maybe 5 chapters from Jameson, and they're like relatively short chapters, and then you switch to like 5 chapters from Grayson, and that's kind of how the entire book goes. And every time I was starting to get invested into one story, I would switch to the other one, and then I'd have to like reorientate myself and had to get invested again. And then again, we switched before I could fully get invested, and it was poorly done. I feel like there should have been a bit more middle ground between the 2 stories if you include them in the same book, so it makes it feel sensical. I just generally think there should have been 2 separate books. And then lastly, I read The Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon by Kimberly Lemming, which I gave 5 stars to the guy I got from NetGalley. I've heard a lot of great things about this book. It's kind of a novella. It's a romance novella, fantasy romance. And I was so excited to give it a read because like with that title, it sounds like such a fun time, and it totally was. I really enjoyed kind of that we got these characters really well developed and this very big group of people going on this quest together, and how they, among different stages of the quest, collected like new people to join their group. I thought was a lot of fun, and I'm very excited to read the other 2 books in this series because they sound just as much fun. And I have already I looked up the synopses on Goodreads, so I know the couples for the other 2 books, and I'm really excited to read them. But this one, I really liked the couple in this one as well. Again, this is very incel-y, and I feel like that's the only thing that was underdeveloped in this book is the romance. but I do still think they had a lot of cute moments together, a lot of steamy moments together. And despite the plot like not being like the main focus of this book, like the fantasy plot, I do still feel like the world and the story was fleshed out enough, and I didn't really feel like I was left wondering or anything. And overall, I think I've read a lot of fantasy romances who do all of these things much worse in a much longer page time. So yeah, and it's such a fun read, like definitely recommend it. I didn't absolutely love it because again, I do think the romance was a little underdeveloped, but for the rest, really like this and definitely recommend it. And yeah, that was already everything that I read this month. Very quick video. I never filmed a wrap up this quickly, but that's what happens when you don't read a lot. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you thought of these books, if you've read them, as well as one of the books you read this past month. And then I guess I'll see you next time. Bye.